Welcome back to another episode of I Wish They Knew, a show where we share big ideas that deserve more attention in about the time it takes to enjoy a cup of coffee. I'm Joe Hirsch. Today's wish comes from Keith Ferrazzi. Keith is an executive team coach, keynote speaker, thought leader, and founder of Ferrazzi Greenlight, where he has spent more than 20 years coaching Fortune 500 companies, unicorn startups, and even the occasional government. Keith leads the Greenlight Research Institute, which is focused on team transformation, which is apropos to today's conversation because his latest book is Never Lead Alone, 10 Shifts from Leadership to Teamship. Keith, welcome to the show.
Joe, this is going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited.
Looking forward to it. So what do you wish more people knew?
I wish more people realized that we should expect more of our teams, period. We should expect that our teams will step up and meet us in shared leadership, not just wait to be led.
So leadership is about individual heroics. Teamship, which is a really fantastic concept that you outline in the book, is more like a courageous ensemble. It's the shift from thinking that, hey, I'm the leader, it's my job to lift others, to it's everyone's opportunity to lift each other.
Amen. A good leader gives feedback. A great leader gets the team to give each other feedback. A good leader holds the team accountable. A great leader gets the team to hold each other accountable, right? So what if we actually stopped thinking about leaders as what we needed to do and start thinking about what we got the team to do for each other?
So same destination, different journey.
Well, and it frees up the leader by 30%. I mean, we really do need to obligate the team to know what its job is in support of the word that I created, co-elevating, pushing each other higher, not just the leader pulling people higher.
Yeah, you as a leader can try to force a change, but it won't work most of the time. And even if you are successful, it's your change. It's not their change.
Yeah, it's so wonderful to see that click with a team. And it's so amazing to see the outcomes. And it's been extraordinary. I'm bringing this philosophy, even to governments these days. We're working on the transformation of a country to double the GDP using this same philosophy where the team is the ministers, the secretaries, as well as the business community. What does that mean when we start to transform? Or to a Fortune 10 company that still believes it can double its market cap, even though it's $200 billion in market cap.
So you discuss a number of these shifts towards teamship in the book. I want to focus our conversation today on the one that holds the most interest and relevance for my own work and for a lot of listeners out there, and that's the shift from conflict avoidance to candor. What is it that is driving this fear of feedback? Why does there seem to be such a lack of courage to be candid?
I introduced this idea of a social contract among a group of people working together. So one social contract is we're all in a room together. Well, damn it, Joe, I wouldn't challenge you in front of the boss. That would be throwing you under the bus. That's a social contract. There's another social contract that says, Joe, I love you so much. I will always share with you what I'm thinking because I refuse to let you fail. You need to have the benefit of all of my input. Now, why is it that giving each other inputs is so debilitatively fearful? And it's because most of the time in the past, when we've given input, we've actually given directives. When I give my son feedback, I am not giving him inputs. I'm saying, stop eating that way, sit up straight, stop, beating up your brother, whatever it happens to be. And we've always been conditioned to hear feedback as a directive from our teachers, from our coaches, from our bosses, etc. But now what I'm trying to introduce is how do I get a team to give each other feedback? We've got to stop holding on to the belief that it's anything more than an input. If in a team you're constantly giving each other directives, who do you listen to? But if in a team, your job is to give each other the full breadth of the data, the input, the points of view, but still, Joe, let you make the decision. We're not giving you a directive. We're giving you inclusive, bold inputs. Now it's powerful because we can assure that this will get to more innovation in a faster period of time if we can use new processes to give you bolder feedback.
Yeah, you're not forcing a change. or forcing your will, you're giving others the will to change.
Exactly. And this is something that is just game changing for people. In the book, every chapter has a diagnostic. And there's a couple of questions in each chapter that gets you to do a pulse check for your team. One of the most powerful questions in the Candor chapter is, do we challenge each other in the room when it's risky to do so? I was with a team this morning and the number was on a scale of 0 to 5, 1.3, right? And that's pretty standard. I've never seen teams go much higher than in the mid twos. So we do not have a social contract to challenge each other when it's risky. Now what I do is I say, okay, Joe, let's practice a candor break. Everybody in the room, let's go to breakout rooms. And I want all of you in groups of 2 to answer the following question. What conversation should we be having as a team that we're not having today?
Yeah, what is not being said that should be said?
What's not being said in the room? What conversation should we have? If I had given you that question in a large room with the team, I would have heard crickets. But now what I've done is I've given you an assignment to go into a small group of 2 or 3 where you have more psychological safety. Psychological safety in breakout rooms goes up to 85%. And I'm giving you an assignment to come back with an answer. And everybody does. And it's shocking. And all of a sudden we're like, holy cow, we actually did that. We just put something on the table that we were afraid of putting on the table before. The other one's called a stress test. Let's say, Joe, you're running a critical marketing initiative. You report to the team, here's what I've been working on. Here's where I'm struggling. Here's where I'm going. That's the standard format of a stress test. But we all know that we're not just doing a report out where we're going to listen to you and move on to the next report out. We know that we're now obligated to go into breakout rooms and write the answer to the following question. What challenge do we have for Joe? What innovation would we offer Joe? Where might we help Joe? Now, again, what I've done is I've turned the culture you want to have in your team, I've turned it into a simple assignment called stress testing. People do it. People go into their rooms and they are willing to write challenges that they would not have spoken in the big room for fear that that would be throwing Joe under the bus. Now, I see these practices repeatedly used and repeatedly transform a team. It literally takes a moment for a team to generate what I call hope and possibility. My gosh, we actually can be different and better than I ever imagined we could be as a team.
I'm curious about the culture piece, because culture is the result of a series of choices that are made and reinforced in practice on a daily basis. What about leaders who would come back to you and say, I'm operating inside a culture of nice. People view candor as a relationship hazard. Or maybe we are operating in a low trust environment where there's a great deal of suspicion around feedback motives or feedback intentions. How do you even get started with these practices with those kinds of constraints?
I actually am going to say something heretical, which is I don't think my job is that tough. My job is a coach of high-performing teams. And I also don't think that changing culture is very tough. We are so uncurious, lacking curiosity around changing practices and how we work. We still think that we have single big conversations in meeting rooms where if 12 people are in the room, only 4 people get a chance to talk. And then what do we have? What happens? A nice culture won't speak up in the room, but I'm sorry, polite means political. If you're not talking in the room, you're going to talk behind each other's back when you leave.
Yeah, they're still talking, just not
They're still
in front of
talking,
each other. Yeah.
right? So we all know this, and yet we're so uncurious to explore new ways of working. What I found, interestingly enough, Joe, as I stepped back and I looked at all the heroes in the book, they were all engineers, oddly enough, who had chosen to re-engineer their ways of working, not just their products. Isn't that interesting? It was a big revelation at the end. I had to go back and rewrite the intro for it because I was like, holy cow, this is a bunch of people who had an engineering mindset, and they not only put it to their products, they put it to their ways of working. That's what we're lacking. We're still having the same way of teaming and collaborating in meetings that haven't worked for decades, and we've known it and we haven't changed it.
Yeah, we're perpetuating a lot of the bad processes and creating this downstream negativity effect that's rampant throughout our organization.
And we've become normalized. It's become what we expect. And if you can try on a couple of these practices and even get a little bump in hope and possibility, your team will absolutely love and adore you and start to gobble them up.
So stress test, Candor break, which just to clarify is not a break from Candor. It's a pause to become more candid. But these are great techniques in terms of getting people to actually say the hard truths and the uncomfortable things. What about the other side of it? Feedback can be positive too. And I don't much love praise sandwiches. I do like praise, especially when it's focused on process and effort, not just results and talent. You mentioned a few techniques in the book about how to make praise a practice. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, there's a wonderful leader named George Fisher at T-Mobile. A lot of the people who really get celebration right are salespeople. George is a consummate sales leader, and he realizes that if he wants his people to go out and do, extraordinary things, he's got to keep their tank full. And keeping the tank full, celebration, reward is such a powerful mechanism. But it's one thing to come from a leader. It's another thing if we just practice peer-to-peer praise. So much of what I'm trying to do is disperse the responsibility of everything on the leader's shoulders, running around playing whack-a-mole, figuring out everybody's energy, figuring out how to prop people up, figuring out how to hold people accountable. If we got the team to be looking at everything and doing it for each other, it's an amazing lift to the leader. And that's true of celebration. So, just simply once a month, having the team go around and pick one person that each person is individually grateful for something they've done that month. Now, what's really powerful about this is it has an unintended consequence, which is after 3 months, if Keith's the SOB that nobody has ever been grateful for, that also sends quite a message, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
So It's a powerful, simple little practice that starts to make praise and celebration more abundant among a team.
Yeah. And you can talk about what you admire about the person. You can also talk about what needs to change. And when you give that candid feedback in the context of caring, it just lands differently.
One of the things I like to do is to turn the team into each other's competency coaches too. So I practice a thing I call the open 360. We all know what 360-degree reviews are. Usually they're a bit resisted because they're these anonymous things. Some people can use them punitively. They're often delivered when somebody is under a microscope, etc. But if we just make it something that's normalized, let's say once a quarter the team goes around and we start with Joe, who's our leader, and everybody goes around and said, Joe, what I really most appreciate about your leadership this last quarter was X. Boom, boom, boom. Everyone shares up with Joe. And then everybody goes around and says, Joe, because we care about your success, and it's frankly so important to ours, I might suggest in the next quarter you do this. Boom, 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 boom. And then they go to Keith. Keith, what we really appreciated about you in this last quarter was X. Boom, boom, boom. Here, Keith, in the next quarter, we might suggest do. So a simple open 360 starts to prime the pump that we are each other's coaches. And I've really engineered that practice because I noticed that if you share in the past what you've appreciated about somebody, it's positive and everybody loves it. But if you start going into the past and pointing out what they've done wrong, people get defensive. On the other hand, if you go to the future and say, because I care about you, I might suggest. Now, all the analysis of what they've done wrong in the last quarter is built into, Joe, what I think you might want to do in the future is X, but then it's just a suggestion. Mm-hmm. It's not a critique. It's a suggestion for your elevation.
Yeah, and it's packaged differently. The tone is totally different.
Yeah,
totally different. I imagine that it's more than just curiosity that drives these changes among leaders. It's humility also. For leaders that maybe are too into themselves or too insecure about their own places in their organizations, how can they make that shift?
You've just said it. I mean, I have engineered all of these practices from direct observations over 3,000 teams. So 3,000 teams we've observed, we've seen practices, we've extracted practices, we've applied them to hundreds. If they work, they become worthy of this book, a high return practice. And what I can say is that, and you nailed it, those who lack humility are deeply insecure. So we really do have to make sure that we're balancing the critique with the respect, with the feedback that's negative, with the celebration. And underlying are the shifts from making relationships and bonding an accidental thing you do while walking down a hallway, bumping into each other at a coffee room or a lunch conversation to being something that's very purposeful and a shared experience. We build the relationship underpinning before we go into the challenging. And the 3 chapters that deal with that are the bonding piece, a sense of shared resilience and having each other's back, and you mentioned it earlier, elevating each other through celebration. Those 3 chapters build the foundation at the bottom upon which you can do the candor and the peer-to-peer feedback and coaching.
Yeah, there are so many great shifts here towards teamship, which is honestly, it's the operating system that we need at this moment.
Yeah.
The book is Never Lead Alone, and the author is Keith Ferrazzi. Keith, thanks for sharing your wish with us today.
So fun. Thanks, Joe.